and Australia. We don't know a lot about why Tao's ancestors left Africa, let alone how they populated islands in the Pacific Ocean. Harsh climate may have sent them searching for greener pastures. A booming population may have made resources scarce. Or perhaps it was just the opposite.
If they're doing very well in that kind of environment and that environment suddenly spreads because of the climate change, then it's the driving pump that gets them moving and gets them spreading to other parts of the planet.
Until recently, most scientists believe people took a northern route out of Africa, across the Sinai into the Middle East. But since that required crossing the Sahara Desert, many are now looking further south. At the southern tip of the Red Sea, Africa is a mere 17 miles from the Arabian Peninsula. It's unclear if people would have seen the other side back then, but birds, dust, perhaps a forest fire would have signaled that something was out there. They may have walked, swam, or rafted, but around 60,000 years ago, the genetics indicate they left. Once they reached the Arabian Peninsula, there was nothing to get in their way. Skillful fishermen, they found a limitless supply of seafood for thousands of miles. They journeyed along the coasts of Iran and Pakistan, down and around India, all the way into Southeast Asia. Tao's ancestors made it to Thailand by around 50,000 years ago. But while many with her marker chose to stay put there, climate at the time allowed many more to venture further. Today, miles of ocean separate mainland Asia from the islands of Java, Sumatra, and Borneo. But during the Ice Age, when vast amounts of our oceans were frozen at the poles, Earth was a very different place. In the warm tropics, sea levels were around 300 feet lower. As a result, what are islands today were linked up back then. One continuous landmass connected Asia with southern Indonesia, just north of Australia. People could walk all the way to Java without getting their feet wet. But the story doesn't end there. Some of Tao's ancestors stayed in Southeast Asia, but their markers are found as far away as Australia, in people like the Aborigines. To reach there, even with the lower sea levels at the time, they still had to contend with some 45 miles of open water.
The big question is, how do they do it?
They may have been out fishing in craft and currents would have taken them away, or it could have been deliberate. And if they were under pressure where they were, other peoples or shortage of food, they may have tried it. They may have taken the risk, taken the gamble and gone for it.
And whether they set out to reach a new continent or drifted to it, around 45,000 years ago, modern humans landed in Australia. While it's tempting to think of these epic journeys as deliberate migrations, this was likely not the case. Our ancestors didn't exactly have Australia in mind when they left Africa. Life was all about more immediate opportunities.
It's one generation after another is moving into different areas because of demographic pressure within. At the end of the day, what you're after is food. And that is really what's driving this, not a sort of migration. The guy that left the Horn of Africa didn't find Australia. It was probably the great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandson of that person or daughter that eventually got to Australia.
People likely moved no more than a few miles up the beach from their parents back then. But over generations, those miles added up. And even at the rate of just 1 mile a year, people could get from Africa to Australia in less than 10,000 years. Unfortunately, if any evidence of early human settlements were left behind, they're underwater now. Submerged thousands of years later when the Ice Age receded, glaciers melted, and sea levels rose. The little evidence we do have indicates Tao's ancestors may not have been the first to take this trek. Some people may have reached Asia thousands of years sooner. For that story, we rewind to the rainforests of Sumatra, 74,000 years ago. Mount Toba erupts with a force greater than 1 billion tons of TNT. It's the largest explosion on Earth in the last 2 million years. Thousands of tons of ash spew into the atmosphere and block out the sun for up to a decade. Ash from the eruption blankets areas nearly 3,000 miles from Toba. And while genetics tells us people hadn't left Africa at the time, today in India, archaeologists are digging up a very different picture. In the very ash that fell during the explosion. It places humans directly in Toba's path. Toba's ash remains a precious commodity in Jawalapur, India. Local villagers mine it for things like polishes and abrasives. To Cambridge University's Michael Petraglia and Ravi Korisethar of Karnataka University, it's an invaluable line in the sand. They believe it holds proof that people were already living far from Africa 74,000 years ago, when Toba blew its top.
We're looking at the passage of time. And so this goes back many, many thousands of years. And then right here, we have the Toba ash, which dates to 74,000 years ago.
Any tools found below the ash were left there prior to the eruption. Anything above was left after. These scientists are finding tools before and after.
Which means to us that these human groups survived through the Toba supereruption.